please, but be aggressive. I'm myopic, and then I don't see hands raised, and then I'm racist, anti-feminist, and so on, which I am, but I'm a universal racist, as I emphasize. I hate all nations, all ethnic groups. Then Scout, you can be truly honest today. Please.
Okay,
so, but just, do you hear her?
I'll talk really loud.
Perfect. Okay, sorry,
so
please.
I have a question for you. I think I understand your concept of intellectual violence, but when does it stop? And how do we stop it collectively? And when do we draw the line between the intellectual self-violence and the physical violence towards others?
Okay, what I would have think is, first, look, it will maybe, probably you will disagree, but I would say that why should it stop? I mean, wait a minute, sometimes violence is needed. You know, it's hard to admit it, but don't you think that sometimes violence is needed? Not only big pathetic examples, like, for example, what would you say in Europe in 1940? No, you cannot beat Hitler with intellectual violence. You should kill. No, one has to say this to make it clear. The task was there to kill Germans, to terrorize them, to throw them into a panic. This doesn't mean that I agree with everything. Scandalous things were going on. For example, recently I visited Hamburg, where they showed me even today there is bitterness, and justified bitterness, by how in Hamburg, you know, the rich Hanseatic cities with many villas, and practically all the bombing we've been seeing today was targeted on the working class suburbs. All the rich, so I'm not justifying everything. The first thing I'm saying is that how should I put it, the limit for me is not where to stop in the sense of certain things are prohibited, we shouldn't do. Okay, let me provoke you, but in a friendly way. Provoke you in the sense of, let me give you an extreme example. Maybe I use it in one of my last books, but I don't even know where I can imagine a situation, you may disagree with me, but I stand by you, where I would kill a person, directly, brutally, hopefully poison him, a person who even didn't do anything really violent against other people. Let me tell you, okay, now, after this bombastic announcement, in Argentina, I learned about a regular figure in these military regimes, which were, as we all know, torturing prisoners, the so-called doctor, medical psychiatric advisor. He didn't do anything dirty, just, let's say, that's friends are for, let's say I have to torture you. Life is life. No, okay. I call a doctor who examines you and said, what do you want? You want this guy to survive, torture him in this way, kick him into the kidneys, so much electricity into his balls, and so on. You can go to the end, then one eye. You know, you just give the advices, and then you go, and then you can say, sorry, I didn't do nothing, and so on. If I were to be, sorry for the ridiculous melodrama, with such a person, and at a table, and if I were to be sure that, hey, even if I denounce him to the police, the guy, how can you have good connections, nothing would happen. B, if I were to have an opportunity by chance, although I don't know what a ridiculous chance, a little bit of good poison in my pocket, let's say you go to the toilet, I would without any problem poison. Maybe I wouldn't, but then I would be ashamed of myself for not doing it. I think I would have done it. Without any problem, I would have killed you. So, you know what I mean? I don't think the problem is here. Can we do this? Can we do that? Maybe there are situations where you do many things. The problem is not this. The moment you accept this formulation, you already, I think, play the game of those in power, because they are doing, how should I put it, the problem is not this one of these crazy, irrational exceptions, however we call them. The problem is elsewhere. The problem is, for me, still, how, with regard to the process of liberation, and not liberation in some obscure Stalinist sense, but let's put it naively, authentic liberation, how does violence function? And I'm ready to, how should I put it, as I the title that I used long time ago, Liberation Hurts. I don't believe, unfortunately, in this idea, you know, somehow we will just be nice, politically correct, and things will happen, and so on. No, there are moments when you have to act, and so on, and even more, you know, unfortunately. There are moments where you have to act without being covered by any democratic or whatever procedure, unfortunately. There are moments where it's a question, do I do it or not, fast, and so on. But of course, I see no danger in where some people like to see danger. But how then can we be sure that this will not explode? You know, this wisdom, which has its justification, that yes, many things started like this, and then violence have a tendency of reproducing itself endlessly, turning into a terror, and so on and so on. This is a totally serious problem. I admit it. It was the catastrophe of the 20th century. I'm the first to admit it. I'm the first to admit that even, like, if we can be so vulgar and look at it quantitatively, in a way, there was more suffering, sorry for this obscenity, in Stalinist Russia than in Nazi Germany. Because, you know, in Nazi Germany, terror was nonetheless limited to Jews, communists, and so on. In the high point of terror in Stalinism, it was real madness, like everyone could be a victim. There were no rules. But what I'm saying is that I don't like this logic of, you see, if you start with a revolution, it necessarily ends in death. No, I claim that it ends in terror at a very precise moment, and that moment, I don't think that the logic is that of a direct passage from revolutionary violence to that, how should I put it, to this, how should we call it, post-revolutionary state terror. I think things are more complex here. I know I didn't satisfy you. I cannot in 5 minutes now, but...
Well, it didn't, but you're talking about structural violence. And
yeah, but also, unfortunately, I talk also sometimes, if necessary, about, how should I put it in naive terms, real interpersonal violence. You know, it all depends on, how should I put it, when you are the victim of violence, what are you allowed to do to strike back? I don't accept any a priori limits. And no, not understanding. I'm not, for example, in any way, not even a mediated way, condoning so-called Middle East terror or whatever. I think first there is absolutely no emancipatory potential in it. Look at the ideology. I'm here. You know, you think I was just Israel bashing. No, no, no. I do what few people do. When we talk about Hamas, Hezbollah, and so on, I look at their website in English. And then you learn what they are really saying. It's not even the Jews are the enemies. It's that they say it very clearly. The greatest enemy, the point things went wrong in the West, is the French Revolution, with all these ideas of feminine equality, blah, 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 and so on, which ruined the organic order, and so on. So I'm not justifying any of this. I'm just saying that maybe we differ here, that I'm not ready to accept any, how should I put it, any a priori limitations, like, but we will never kill. Who knows? There are situations where I claim, crazy as it sounds, you are ethically obliged to kill. I know it sounds crazy, but I honestly tell you what do I mean. You know why? Because I have another bitter experience. The experience of how all those ideologies which proclaimed non-violence ended up, as a rule, justifying even worse violence. Like my royal example, but not the only one, and I respect it, is, for example, Tibetan Buddhism. I mean, I read a couple, no, I will not repeat my old stories about that wonderful book, Brian Victoria, Zen at War, which shows how Zen was militarized. But I read a couple of other historical books which point out very nicely how, like, to put it in very vulgar terms, if you try to measure on average when some regimes in East Asia were at least for some time ruled by